Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. Hey gang, stick around after the stories as I want to do from time to time. I'm sharing a tune from a band here in Buffalo, New York. A friend of mine, Mike C., plays the bass, and I've shared one of their videos in the past, and they've got a new album out and a new single called Anxiety. Hope you guys check it out, and I hope you dig it. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and I'll be sure to pass things on to the band. And now leave us not be hasty. Let's get it on. But Who's the White Pale Man? By Pretty Pickle. The title sounds quite racist without any intent, I promise. I'm going to tell this story in backwards order, as it seems more appropriate. My partner and I lived in this apartment once back in 2021. It was a small one-bedroom apartment with a built-in bathroom. You'd have to walk through the bedroom in order to use the toilet. This one night, it was around 3 a.m. in the morning when my partner woke me up, throwing punches in the air and screaming at something that didn't exist. I asked him, "Why the hell did you do that?" He was hysterical, asking if I was really asking him that, if I was also awake. I said yes, and he replied, "Didn't you see the white man standing or hovering over you just then?" I had no idea what he was talking about. He got fed up with me, so he went into the bathroom to check if anyone was there. But it was empty. No one was there. His description of this person hovering over me was of a man who had long white hair, a pale white face, and an evil grin. He said he was sort of crouching over me, and that he was trying to grab me. He was still really upset about it, so we switched sides on the bed, and he just didn't want me to get hurt. But he couldn't sleep afterwards. I thought he might have been drinking, but he hadn't been. He had gotten home late from work and had gone straight to bed. Exhaustion? Possibly, if it had been the only time a white pale man was mentioned in my life. Back around 2009 or 2010, I was dragged to a fortune teller with my maternal side of the family. They truly believe in that sort of thing, whereas I'm quite a skeptic. They'd spent a bunch of money that they didn't have just to be told their future and fortunes. And I was dragged along simply because my foster mother wanted to see if the guy I was dating would turn out to be a millionaire. That was in secret. The fortune teller started the session off by giving my foster mother her fortune, that she'd be so rich she wouldn't have to work. She'd be flying overseas like a millionaire. She'd be showered with gifts and love. Then he continued with my grandma, my aunt, my cousin, and then me. I remember specifically what he asked of me. "You met him, haven't you?" he said. The fuck did he mean by that? "You guys have met each other already. A couple of years back. The white pale man. And he smiled at you, didn't he?" I was still confused as hell with what he meant by that. "So many weird things have happened to you in your life, but you refuse to acknowledge them," he went on. I eventually had to ask for clarification because this was so dumb that I couldn't wrap my head around what the hell he was going on about. He explained that I had so many paranormal encounters growing up that one would just have to believe them. But I refused to, and he knew that. The fortune teller thought it was wise of me to not acknowledge them, but he had also warned me that it would be a dangerous thing one day. I still didn't know what he meant by that. He then asked about my old, dusty Nokia phone when I had taken a photo that this white pale man was in, too. I froze. He asked me where I had put it, and I told him I had thrown it away. Honestly, I couldn't remember. After all, he was a fortune teller. He should know more than I did. None of my maternal side knew anything about it, and my foster mom just kept interrupting him, asking him if I'd be married to a rich man one day so that she could retire in peace without having to lift a finger. This fortune teller couldn't even tell how greedy my foster mother was. What a scammer. but he did keep on saying that this white pale man was actually my guardian angel, and that I shouldn't be afraid of him. I called bullshit on that too. Around 2004, I wanted to have a BlackBerry phone, but my family was so poor we couldn't afford it. My foster dad got me this second-hand old Nokia phone instead. You know, the one with only back camera and no front camera. It was around 2 or 3 a.m. one morning while I was still up chatting with my pals overseas. It was summer break, so I could stay up for however long I wanted. MySpace was still a thing back then, and I wanted to post some cute selfies on my profile. So I did just that, alone in my room. And yes, something did happen. The room I had my computer in was positioned with me facing the wall, and behind me was just a large space for a bookshelf, a TV, and a large lounging sofa. I took several photos with the camera, which meant that I couldn't see whatever the heck was going on, or what I looked like. I just had to take the chance that one of them would turn out okay. I think I took about 10 photos. None of them was cute, until I got to the last one. There was a man behind me in the picture. He was white, pale. His eyes were black and large, and he smiled. His smile was wide from side to side, and he had his face on my left shoulder side, as if we were best friends. He also had somewhat long white hair. I remember screaming, and I threw the phone away. I don't recall if I deleted the photo, but I don't have the phone anymore to check. Numbers of 5 by Logrin for Real 66. Things keep happening in fives, or included something that happened in fives during an unexplained experience I've had. Here's my last experience with things happening in fives. This is 3 different nights of unexplained experiences, but all 3 are almost the same. I was outside on my sister's property in Denison, Texas, which is where I was living at the time. Besides the main house, there was also a guest house out back, which I was living beside in a 30-foot camper. My sister has a bedroom at the very back of the main house that reaches across the whole width of the house. It had a fireplace in it, too. Before my grandfather bought her the house and the 3 acres, one of the prior owners had built a wall down the center of the bedroom widthwise, making it into 2 long, skinny rooms. It had 4 big windows with foil on them, stretching across the whole width of the back of the second room of the old bedroom, which was the very back of the house. That first night, it was sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. I was leaning up against one of the very tall foiled windows, with only my head looking out at the pasture behind our property. Hey, it was a good night. There weren't any tweakers out there. But all of a sudden, I heard what sounded like footsteps inside the room that I was outside of, and the footsteps started at the doorway of the long room and were coming towards the foiled window I was leaning up against outside the house. After the loud 5 footsteps starting at the doorway of that room came towards me, I knew with about 2 more steps it'd be at the window my head was leaning against. I moved away from the window instinctively about 15 feet after that 5th footstep. That spare room had stuff just literally thrown into it from the doorway by my sister and brother-in-law. I mean, there was no pathway to walk in there. But each footstep had a sound of someone stepping down onto the crap on the floor, with the sound of the stuff settling to the floor under pressure, and all of that I could catch with every single footstep. As I mentioned, it did 5 footsteps until I moved away from the window, and each of the 5 steps sounded as if it were recorded on an old tape recorder. Each had the same identical sound and volume. Thankfully, nothing else happened that night. The second thing, I was outside leaning with my head against a different foiled window outside the same room, the window furthest away from the room's doorway. It was several days after my last encounter, somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m. It was the same thing. Suddenly, starting at the doorway of that room, 5 same exact footsteps, the same exact sounds and volume as the time before, just like a recording. I was way at the other end of that room outside, leaning with my head against the 4th foiled window. But just as before, after the 5th footstep, I realized it was coming to the window I was at. I know within a couple of more steps it would be at the window, so once again I moved away from it about 15 feet. I stood there for a while, but nothing else happened. The 3rd night, same time, place, sounds, and volume, but at a different window. No matter what window I was at, it was still 5 footsteps, the exact same sounds, each footstep, each time sounding like a recording. The 4th night, each of these experiences being 2 or 3 days apart, it was only about 9 p.m. It was at night, and it was dark, and I leaned my head against one of the 4 foiled windows, this time bumping the back of my head loudly several times against it. Nothing happened. Needless to say, I never looked for whatever it was. My sister sold the house not long after that. But I can tell you one thing. I did find out that my niece had played with a Ouija board in that room years prior. Well, just goes to show you, when you have unexplained experiences, no matter how long or short, or how many times you experience them, you never, ever forget them. My Husband Died in 2020 by Tink the Chi. After my husband died, I found out a series of very unpleasant things about him. It was devastating and took me more than 3 years to come to grips with it. He died in August of 2020, and I sold our condo in June of 2021. He had renovated the entire condo. Kitchen, both bathrooms, flooring, trim, doors, everything. It took nearly 3 years. I have 2 small dogs, and when the realtor told me someone was coming to see the property, I took the dogs, locked the door, and went outside. The realtor told me to be out for about 30 minutes, and after that period of time I went back upstairs. The door was locked, I entered, and when I did it looked as if people had been there. Doors were moved, the laundry doors were wide open, and I had closed them, they were barn doors. And then I got a text from the realtor asking me why I didn't put the key in the lockbox on the main floor outside. The people couldn't get in with their realtor. I'll be honest, I was in a very bad place after my husband died, particularly after what I found, and thinking in detail was not something I was doing. I went to the main washroom and saw that the bath mat was sitting over the tub not the way I left it. I touched it and felt water, almost as if someone had gotten out of a shower and had been standing on it. It was a fairly big condo, 2 bedrooms and an office. When the dogs and I were in bed at night, I could hear noises in the kitchen after he died. I was too afraid to get out of bed and check. It was a concrete building and we couldn't hear anything people were doing in apartments near us, so hearing something was very unusual. I moved in June of 2021 to a new condo. The first night there I was alone. The dogs were being taken care of. I was lying in bed, not asleep yet, just lying on my side at the edge, and I felt someone or something brush past me. My hair actually moved, and it scared the hell out of me. I just lay there for a few minutes afraid to move. Finally, I moved again recently far from where I had been living. Last Christmas Eve, I was in bed and my bedroom door was open. I clearly heard 3 knocks on the door. It happened twice, and it also really scared me. I had never been one to think of the spirit world until recently. Last Christmas, I made statements out loud and told him to leave me alone. And so far, all has been good. But the last 4 years has been a real ride. Evil Entity by K. Bitch. For privacy purposes, I'd like to keep the identities of folks in this story as minimal as possible, so I'll be referring to one of my siblings as S and my other sibling as S2. As a disclaimer, I want to state that S's condition has worsened to the point that his mental state during his manic and hallucinating episodes is of a 6-year-old. I'm still learning how to understand and care for him with patience myself, so I can't answer deeply rooted questions about the conditions yet. S has been diagnosed. He developed this a few years ago, coincidentally after a situation during a road trip. My father and my sibling were traveling to Oregon to go scuba diving after moving to Washington for a new start several years ago. It was the dead of night when my father felt a very dark presence of a being between him and my sibling. He said it was there for an hour before departing. He was bothered, but being skeptical and an unbeliever in the supernatural, he kept it to himself. Shortly after, S began diving into unprovoked hallucinations and delusions, acting crazy, screaming out things like, "Leave me alone! Go away! Stop! Stop! Stop!" He would pace back and forth all night long talking to himself, having full conversations. He'd walk from his room to the living room, sit on the recliner, laugh maniacally, and then bang the bottom of the seat on the floor. And he'd get up, pace to the kitchen, pull out some food and eat a couple of bites before leaving it, then pace back to the recliner, and repeat. He would pace to the garage and chain smoke before repeating everything, and then finally going to bed in the early morning hours and sleeping through the day. This happened every night for the last 3 years. From then on, he's been unable to function in society, dropped out of school, lost legal driving privileges due to multiple caused crashes, the whole shebang. He's not caged in his home. He has the freedom to walk places, ask for rides, and take his motorcycle out, although he chooses not to ride it. It's been absolute hell for everyone in the home. A few months ago, S brought up the situation in the car with my father and asked him if he remembered the trip and the evil entity that sat between them. That's when he started to believe that there was more to the story than the mental illness. And since then, there have been signs off and on. One night, my father was walking around the kitchen before heading into the garage when he saw S out the window walking down the street hunkered over and thought as they do. He thought, what the hell is he doing out there? Of course, he entered S's room to find him asleep in bed. Every so often, my father would be looking through the news, media platforms, job ads, etc., and come across 666, one after the other. For several weeks in 2023, my father saw a star brightly shining in the east, and correlating it to the 3 wise men in the Bible with the star, S's condition improved to the point that we thought he was getting better. The star disappeared one morning, and my sibling's improvement spiraled backwards. That star hasn't been seen since, and S's condition has been worsening. After our shed burned down, my father rummaged through it to find any surviving memorabilia items, and found the photo of Jesus his mother gave to him before passing. Half burnt, but the face was still intact and visible. Nothing else in the shed survived. My other sibling, who, when they and their partner first began reliving with the parents, had dealt with some severe issues relating with S's worsening condition, so they quickly purchased a trailer to avoid the issues within the home. One particular story they told me, there was a night S was running around the trailer laughing, shining lights peering into the windows. Then he suddenly stopped and walked through a gate into the house and just went back to sleep. Later that night, my other siblings swore up and down that they heard the gate quietly open, and S's shadow, nothing but the shadow, through closed blinds, was seen clear as day shifting on their trailer walls when they stopped moving and stayed still. My other sibling texted our mother about what they were experiencing, and our mother went in to check on S, where she saw him dead in his sleep, still in bed. And this was all happening while my other sibling was seeing this shadow. I very recently moved back into the family home with my current partner, and we went for a walk late on one evening. My partner saw a shadow slipping behind the side of the house, and we thought nothing of it because there are several different types of nocturnal animals where we live. We returned from our walk around 12 a.m., our dogs barking, and then silence. And through the front gate, my partner saw a shadow of a person peeking out from behind the side of the house while we were walking up to the front door. He told me what he saw, and I thought he was joking, trying to scare me, but he relayed the information again. The figure was completely black, darker than the night itself, and it was just peeking out, watching us. We rushed inside, and he immediately rushed over to the back door where the garage connects to a stretch of the porch and checked on the dogs. They were both under the porch, whimpering and shaking. Not a usual thing for them to do. My partner checked the garage, and seeing the light was just turned on, and to see if S was still up, where he saw a recently extinguished butt of a cigarette, and smoke still in the air, but no sign of S. He returned, and we prepared for bed. I walked into the kitchen for a snack, and I heard a large thud on the back porch, and I froze and just waited, listening. My partner saw me looking at the door, and we heard another thud, and then a heavy drag on the porch. He ran to the door and locked it. We normally kept the doors unlocked for my other sibling and their partner who live in the trailer. We did an inside perimeter check before my partner checked S's room to find him asleep. I texted my other sibling to inform them that all the doors and windows were locked, so they would need to wait for morning if they wanted to use the restroom due to this said issue. The scary part is, my father told me that the same entity was seen twice before on different occasions, on the same side of that house. Last night, we poured salt along the side windowsills where the entity had been seen, and our direct window before we went to bed. Strangely, only the light in our bedroom flickered, but we thought nothing of it. The next morning, my other sibling texted me to ask if there was a power outage in the house last night. I had no recollection of an outage, and after asking everyone else in the house, no one knew of any outage. But my other siblings said that they saw the house lights flicker several times before it went completely dark, porch lights and all. Going off that, the lights were working just fine the next morning. We're saving to purchase some security cameras for the perimeter of the house for more proof of what is going on and security. We think that S can astral project, even while sleeping without realizing it. I understand that it sounds crazy, and it can most definitely be crazy considering the complexities of our brain, and how we thought it was normal trying to find a rational explanation for the shadows in the shape of people. Unfortunately, my family has a long line of abilities. My mother's side, including all my siblings, have similar abilities to see shadow people, speak with the dead, predict when someone is to pass, and have déjà vu visions. All of my father's sisters can see angels. It must be fucking nice, and my thought of rationality has been swayed by these first-hand experiences I've had. At this time, we're desperate for answers on how to get rid of these evil paranormal things. Even if they're not paranormal, we still want them gone. S's condition is serious, and we don't have the funds to take him to a facility that treats cases like him. So if there's any suggestions of what we can do to support him with socializing groups with mental illness, that would be greatly appreciated. I'll keep everybody updated if we have any more updates or visual proof of this entity. Weird Childhood Experience by Baby Girl Bunny. When I was in 10th grade, I had this close friend. I'll call him Michael. Michael confided in me that he had spiritual gifts, and he could read auras and see spirits. I knew he was legit one day when he told me he could see something horrible attached to me. I didn't believe him until he drew me a picture of it, and what he drew really freaked me out. Basically, when I was young and just starting to struggle with my mental health, I would draw this character that I saw as a representation of my bad thoughts. She was a tall, emaciated, skeletal-like figure with holes for eyes, long fingers, and stringy hair. I would draw her all the time until I started to grow older, and I grew out of it. So you can imagine my surprise when Michael showed me his drawing. The exact creature I had drawn myself countless times. Exact to every detail. I had given her a name in my head. I'm typically a disbeliever in this sort of stuff, but there's simply no way he could have known that. I was embarrassed and ashamed of my mental health and never told anyone about my character. I didn't draw pictures of her anymore, and even if I did, I was never allowed to have friends over, so Michael couldn't possibly have seen any of my drawings. Michael told me that she's attached to me and follows me wherever I go. He said she was an evil energy created by me to personify my bad feelings and thoughts. I don't know how much truth there is there, as I've never heard of anything like that. Anyway, I'm in my 20s now and still think of it frequently, but I've never really talked about it or asked anyone to make sense of it. I am a bit of a skeptic, so I don't know a lot about this paranormal stuff. If anyone has any thoughts or information to share, please do. That experience still freaks me out. Red Eyes at Night by Starbird. A bit of background first. The first time this happened, it was a number of years ago, and I was probably around 13 or 14. The area I lived in was kind of rural. I lived across from an orchard, with one house on a small hill above us right next door, and one slightly below us on the other side, with a massive wooded area directly behind the house. The house above us is kind of separated by a line of trees. We can still see each house. I mean, there's obviously trees, and the road is maybe 20 to 25 feet from the front of each house. It was night, so it was pitch black outside when this happened. We don't have any streetlights where we live because we are in kind of a rural area. We have a grape arbor near the middle of our property. I was just standing on our deck and looking at the house above us, and at the top of the grape arbor is just below ground level with the section of land their house sits on. Behind the arbor is a bit of lawn and some garden, and then the tree line, and there's a thick tree between where our grape arbor is and our neighbor's mailbox that has red reflective discs on it. It was blocked by a big tree. I mean, you can't even really see their mailbox. So I know what I was about to see was not those red reflective discs. It was dark. I mean, really pitch black dark. I had just opened up our kitchen door to let our dog outside to use the bathroom, and our motion light went on because of the door. My dog, who normally ran outside, would not even step outside. All he did was peer towards our neighbor's mailbox and stare. I thought, okay, it's Maine. Did he see a raccoon or a fox or maybe one of the neighbor's cats? Nope. I looked up and above the grape arbor again, and more towards where the thick tree that blocks the view of our neighbor's mailbox were. What I saw were two glowing red eyes. At first I thought, okay, it's just an owl or something. I really didn't know what it was. I tilted my head, and it copied me. The eyes tilted to match my movement, and then blinked. Our motion light doesn't even reach 5 feet past the deck, so I had no clue what this thing was. I couldn't see anything past the light. My dog was freaked out, like full-on claws scrambling against the tile floor, snarling and barking as he ran backwards into the house. My obvious reaction was to look down where my dog started freaking out. When I looked back up, this thing was standing just out of view of the light, like maybe another 6 feet past where the light ended. So much closer. The eyes were level with my own, and I was still standing there in the door. The deck is a good foot off the ground, and the door has a step leading up, so that's 2 feet right there, and I'm 5'2". The red dots or eyes were level with my head. I had no idea what it was at the time, and I just slammed the door shut and locked it and went to my room and acted like I saw nothing. Fast forward a bunch of years, and literally 3 days ago, I started to hear a tapping noise when it would start to get dark. I looked out the window and nothing was there, and the tapping stopped. Another time, I could have sworn I heard my dad calling me, so I called out back to him, asked him what he wanted, and got nothing in return. I looked out the window to the driveway, and his work truck was gone. He wasn't home. The other day, I saw the same thing I did years ago when I was a kid. Red eyes. Just this time near the trail that leads out back into the woods. I was looking out the window, so I just shut my blinds, made sure the doors were locked, turned the lights off, and just pulled a nope, didn't see that, no one's home, you got the wrong address, goodbye. I'm curious as to what it was, though. This red eye thing. I can deal with the spooky sounds like tapping just fine. I mean, I can deal with the fact that I'm good, and it doesn't bother me. But it's those eyes. Those red eyes that look like they'd be about 7 feet off the ground that's freaking me out. If anyone has any idea what it could have been, I would greatly appreciate some input. Now I don't even bother looking outside the windows when it's dark. I've got this mentality of, if I don't see it, it's not there. But some of the windows on this house do not have blinds or shades, and it's the ones in the kitchen that face the woods. Sometimes I do get freaked out because I always feel watched at night if I'm in that kitchen. And those windows are on the top floor. The basement door and windows are below them, and it's a 2-story drop out of those kitchen windows. I would really love it if someone could give me any sort of input as to what the hell I might have seen out there. Because I don't like it, and I want it gone. The Thing in the Mirror by OK Bit. I've always been fascinated by the spirit world. My dad died when I was 16, and I ended up in a group home for a little while after. It was in a very old 2-story house, and the room I shared had 2 parts, the sleeping section and a dressing section. There was a full-length mirror on the closet door in the dressing section. For whatever reason, my roommate and I decided to have a seance with some friends. We decided to try and reach out to my dad. So we sat around, turned the lights off, and used a small candle. The air conditioner kicked on right after we started, and we tried to invoke my dad. As we were doing this, I happened to glance at the mirror and saw what looked like rolling fog inside it. It also looked like someone or something was walking up to the front of mirror from the inside out. Nervously, I quickly nudged my friend next to me, who also saw it. We screamed and everyone else screamed, and we all ran out of the room. When my roommate and I finally got the courage to go back into the room, we found out after turning on the lights that the window unit was never plugged in. The AC should never have come on. I've often wondered, though, what that figure was, the one walking towards us, and what would have happened if it had made it to the front of the mirror. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like to hear narrated on this channel or my podcast, email it to unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment down below to let me know what you think of the stories. I'll respond to you as quickly as I can. Follow me on social media, links to that are in the description. And if you'd like to take your support a step further, a link to my Patreon page is down there too, as well as my storefront at tpublic.com. Get yourself some Uncle Josh and Campfire Crew merchandise. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I apologize if I'm a little nasally. I am fighting some terrible allergies and sinus issues, So I appreciate you guys letting me slide a little bit. And as I wrap up this episode, right after this, hang out and listen to the latest from Swill, a band here in Buffalo, their latest Anxiety. Links to the band's information in the description below. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.